Well, it is officially World Autism Day. Today is April 2nd, and as we know, April is Autism Awareness Month. So I'm going to be making videos throughout the month of April, and I had to put one out today because today is actually World Autism Day. But I do know that this is a great platform for us to be able to put the right information out there about people that are autistic by people who are autistic. So, this is a great day. You know, so many tell us who we are by definition or rate us by some kind of a rating scale to decide how much autism we actually have. So I just thought it was great for me to be able to speak for myself. Yesterday, I talked about autism and I gave the definition of what autism is. So I'm just going to post that again. The CDC's definition of autism is: autism spectrum disorder is a condition related to brain development that impacts how a person perceives and socializes with others, causing problems in social interaction and communication. The disorder also includes limited and repetitive patterns of behavior. The term spectrum in autism spectrum disorder refers to the wide range of symptoms and severity. Now, the reason this is called everything spectrum, as I have said in other videos, is because I like to focus on the word spectrum because it is such a wide umbrella. There are so many people that fit under it. Yesterday, I covered perceptions and socializing and communication. And today, I want to talk about the repetitive patterns of behavior. But before I get to that, there's one other thing that I want to talk about. The CDC also put out a fact of information, according to the CDC, that autism is 4.3 times more prevalent in boys than it is in girls. This is because girls go undiagnosed so many times. I mean, there's so many more girls that have autism that aren't diagnosed. And personally, I think it has to do with masking, which we're going to be looking at that a little bit today as well. As a woman who has autism, living with a 6-year-old girl who has autism, I can tell you that it's very hard for females to get diagnosed with autism. My 6-year-old, she, without a doubt, had autism, and we took her, and it was very hard to get her diagnosed. Even when she had, and this is what they oftentimes do, they'll take like, okay, you have sensory issues. Yes, she has very bad generalized anxiety. And so what they do is you keep finding all of the issues that are under autism, but then they just keep diagnosing it individually instead of lumping it under one thing and just calling it what it is. And I'm not really sure why they do that, why it's so hard for them to diagnose with autism, even though it's blatant. But I do know that masking has a lot to do with it. And she also has learned that very young. Healthline has an article about masking and autism, and it's called Autism Masking: To Blend or Not to Blend. It begins by saying, in places where neurodiversity is not understood or welcomed, autistic people often feel the need to present or perform social behaviors that are considered neurotypical. Some people may also feel they have to hide neurodiverse behaviors in order to be accepted. If you know, or if you are somebody who works all day long to pretend or act all day, it is completely exhausting. Imagine knowing that if you act how you actually feel, you won't be accepted. In fact, people would look at me like we are weird and judge by autism instead of by the whole of the person. And so I can only speak for myself, but I feel that if I really acted the way I felt, and even if I'm shutting down, I still act as if I'm okay. And it gets harder and harder throughout the day to do that. And sometimes when you're having to be on, I call it, multiple days in a row, um, it just gets to the point where it is almost impossible. But I've done it for weeks, months, and years at a time. The next slide says, masking autism may sometimes help protect autistic peoples from being outed or harassed at school or work. I'm just going to talk about some of the jobs that I've had in general because I don't want to talk about any specific job, but I've had, my share of jobs, and I've done a great job in all of them, and I think that I could go back to any of them. Um, but I was expected to do a great deal of work beyond my abilities sometimes. And the more I masked and the better that I performed, because I was masking, no matter how hard it was for me, the more that was put on me. And so then I got stretched and stretched and stretched to the point where it was almost impossible for me to keep that up and keep those abilities up for that long of a period of time. I mean, sometimes you can perform to a certain level for just so long, but if it's expected 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, and then, oh, you did a good job, here, I'm going to stretch you even further or even further, and then they can stretch you outside of your abilities, and you want to perform, because I know for me and a lot of us on the spectrum, we are perfectionists, so we are going to throw ourselves into that and give every single ounce of ourselves to the project that you're asking us to do. And we're almost setting our own selves up for failure and not even realizing how difficult it is for us to perform. And we get more upset at ourselves that we're letting you down than you might even be. The person, the boss, might even be. But it's kind of sad because I know for myself, as well as some other people that are autistic, you, like I said, you want to do your best, and it's not only that, but you feel like you have a lot of people counting on you, and you just are devastated if you can't perform to the level that you are asked to. And when you do perform right, and those abilities get stretched way outside of what you're capable of doing, you still want to make it work for the other person, even more than yourself. You just want to please. Masking can also lead to some serious health consequences, so it's important to understand the behavior and its effects on people who regularly camouflage their diversity. Now, my 6-year-old was doing horribly in public school. She was acting up to the point where she would run and she hid and they couldn't find her. She was cutting her clothes when she got a hold of scissors. She was placed in a school recently for kids with autism, and she is doing amazing. I mean, when she was in her public school, she was having to try to figure out how to mask all day long, and it just wasn't working for her. Her anxiety was so high. But then she was taken out of that environment and she was placed into another environment where there were other kids with autism, and she is just soaring. Let's look at exactly what masking is. Masking, which is also called camouflaging or compensating, is a social survival strategy. How it looks will vary from person to person, but masking can include behaviors like these: forcing or faking eye contact during conversations. Sometimes I try to do that, but I just can't do it. I've tried and tried to make eye contact with people. It's even hard for me to make eye contact in the camera. It's just, my brain doesn't work. I lose abilities when I look at somebody, so it's just not something that I can do. The next one is imitating smiles and other facial expressions. I totally do that. I've studied people. I was in acting classes. I mean, I completely study people's facial expressions to figure out the proper way and how to act in certain situations. The next one is mimicking gestures, which I do that all the time too, and I know that my kids do as well. The next one is hiding or minimizing personal interests. I know that I could talk all day about certain topics, so I have to be careful, and I know other people that are autistic that are the same way. So I basically can tell myself, no, now you have to stop talking about this and ask the other person about themselves. So it's just something I've taught myself, and I can catch myself doing if I'm not careful. The next one is developing a repertoire. Is that said right? Repertoire of rehearsed responses to questions. I do have scripts. I have scripts of conversations that go through my head before I even go into a conversation. And when it goes off course, I'm normally in trouble. But as the next one says, scripting conversations, which I just stated, do it all the time. The next one is disguising stimming behaviors. Now, it says hiding a jiggling foot or trading a preferred movement for one that's less obvious. Now, I have never been a big body stimmer. I'm just not. But I always did big body movements all the time. I was a swimmer, and I swam 4 hours a day. I was a weightlifter, and it was that big body movement stuff. I was a runner. I had to run. In fact, when I went to college, I didn't walk from class to class. I ran from class to class. So I always had to have that full body movement, and I think that was my way of stimming. Now, when I have meetings and things like that, I hold on to things very tightly to help me get through the meeting. And I do a lot of small things like this constantly with my fingers, or I do this, and I'm constantly rubbing my hands and applying pressure. And I've always done that. I can remember in 7th, 8th grade, I think it was, a teacher actually said to my mom, she rubs her hands together all the time in class. And that's really interesting that she caught that, because back then, they didn't pay attention in the 70s and 80s, or 70s at that time, about kids and those types of behaviors. So that was pretty cool that she did that. Now let's look at why people with autism do mask. Feeling safe and avoiding stigma. Avoiding mistreatment or bullying. And I can remember being bullied in high school. And I didn't want people to know that I was struggling, so I always kept that mask on and acted like everybody else in the class. Or normally, I'll tell you how I got through high school. I got through high school quietly. I hardly spoke. I did have a group of friends. I drank a lot in order to get through. It helped me have a voice at that time, because high school was so hard. And it was just a few years after my dad had died. And I was only 11 when he had passed away. And so I did a lot of masking. And there was a lot of stuff going on in my home at the time. And I had to pretend like it wasn't. And I was told to act like it wasn't. So when you have that kind of stuff going on, you mask and you mask and you mask. And the more that you pretend that you're okay and that you're normal, the more that you can even shut down even more and become even quieter. So that's exactly how I got through high school. The next one is succeeding at work. And of course, we want a mask to be able to get through work. It's our livelihood. We have to make money. But I had to pretend all the time. Even when I worked at a place where a lot of the people there had autism, I still had to mask in order to get through, and I had to pretend a lot. And most of the time, I'm going to say a lot of the time, I wasn't okay. And I didn't even realize it myself because of how much I was masking. The next one I'm going to kind of skip talking about because I just don't feel comfortable talking about it, but it is attracting a romantic partner. I mean, I could see that if you want to get a significant other, that you're not going to be uh, doing a lot of the things, stimming and that type of stuff to get their attention. I mean, hopefully, hopefully that they would love you no matter what as they got to know you. And of course, autism is going to come out that you have it. And it really is just a huge part of who you are. So hopefully, no matter what, they would love you. And if they don't, then you don't want them anyway. The next one is making friends and other social connections. And I faked by drinking and things like that. Like I said, all the way through high school and college and that kind of stuff. And it just helped me get by and fake who I really was. But it got me through. The last one is fitting in or feeling a sense of belonging. And in college, I felt a really big sense of belonging. I had a lot of friends. I got married. There was a lot of really great stuff that was happening with me socially. I did a lot of drinking to have it happen, but I still made it. I do think that I masked a lot, and I really didn't start to figure out who I really was until, honestly, I would say the last year. I think this pandemic has done more for me and able to make me sit still to figure out who I am. Because when you're masking and you're out there and you're trying to perform and you're trying to be who other people want you to be, you really don't know who you are. So this pandemic has been really good for me. It's made me sit still and find me. Next, this slide says, masking begins when the neurodiverse person recognizes that something important hinges on being perceived as neurotypical. Maybe it's friendships, maybe it's a job opportunity, maybe it's personal safety. Whatever the motivation, an autistic person may feel they must hide differences or change the way they naturally act because their living or working environment doesn't tolerate, support, or respect neurodiversity. Now, I do know that if that is the case, I would hope that you could find another place to work or other friends or a different living environment. But sometimes that's just not possible. So in that case, I would find somebody to talk to. I would find a really trusted friend and do everything I could to change where I worked or where I lived or the people I was hanging with. Because if you don't feel comfortable in your own skin and you have to hide who you are, then I really hope and pray that you can change it. People who mask learn how to pretend. And I think women are some of the best pretenders and caretakers for other people that we don't take care of ourselves. So one of the things that's one of the reasons I think that women don't get diagnosed as much, or girls don't. But we have learned to pretend and how to fit in. Social cues from various forms of media. Well, oftentimes you hear people say that they've learned a language on TV. So I honestly have watched TV all the time, and I've learned a lot and how you're supposed to act from the media, from television. The next one states, observe social interactions between people and body. I became a master observer of people and got a degree in psychology because of it, because I have a passion for studying people. The next one states, monitor their own facial expressions and body language. Do it all the time. Next one, practice appearing interested or relaxed. Yep. And lastly, adjust their tone of voice to match other people's vocal pattern. Now, I have my 6-year-old. she would scream all day in just a regular conversation. We are constantly working on her level of volume just in a regular conversation. So, yeah, I mean, we watch other people, we mimic other people, we parrot, we watch TV and all of that in order to know how we are supposed to act in everyday situations. We also do social stories with the kids. The next slide. The cognitive and emotional efforts affects people's mental and physical health. People who camouflage regularly often say they feel drained and exhausted by the effort of trying to conform to neurotypical standards of behavior. And I often say that I feel like I ran a marathon every single day. And when I go to a big event, or I can always relate to, I always say, like, when I went to uh, Cedar Point, or a place like that, or any kind of an event where there's a lot of people, I literally can become white as a ghost. I feel like the entire all of my life has been sucked out of me. So those events can be quite draining. So back to where we started with the whole masking conversation. Who masks more, men or women? According to Healthline, people across the entire gender spectrum engage in masking, so both sides do. But studies show that people who identify as women may mask more often than people who identify as men. There's been some debate about why girls and women may mask autistic traits more than boys and men do. Some research suggests that autistic girls and women may be more included to develop friendships than autistic boys and men. I also know that I've been doing masking since I was as young as I can remember, and we can get so good at it that we can fool the closest people to us. I think sometimes that people who grow up with us are like, you had autism? When you were younger, I never saw that because they really did not know what was going on inside of me when I was in school, when I was going through those things, when I was pretending to so I could fit in. The last thing I want to say about this, and then I'm going to move on to the limited and repetitive behaviors, patterns of behavior that I spoke about earlier. The effort used to copy neurotypical interactions can quickly lead to social overload. So we have to be very careful to have a check of that with our own selves. So we watch, so we don't go into overload, because it happens to us daily. I lived that way for years and years and didn't even realize that I was on overload. And now that it's gone, the kind of stress of trying to live like that for so long is gone. Now I'm finally able to breathe, and it's such a great feeling. So now let's move on and look at the last part of that definition of autism: limited and repetitive patterns of behavior. According to verywellhealth.com, many parents worry about autism when they see their child repetitively lining up toys, spinning objects, or opening and closing drawers or doors. Repetitive behaviors can also involve saying, thinking about, or asking about the same thing over and over again. And I know that I have autism and I have my stuff, but I live with somebody. My 7-year-old he's almost going to be 8. He can tell me the time all day long, every minute. He can look at the calendar and very often tell me that tomorrow is April, or tomorrow is whatever date it is at the time. I'm just throwing a day out. He can tell me that, in 10 days is Christmas, in 10 days is Christmas, in 10 days is Christmas. And, I love him so much, and I try really hard for it not to get to me, because it can. after a while. So one of the things that I really try to do for him is make visual chains. And, it's when his birthday is going to be coming up at the end of April. So we're going to have a long chain, and just take one off every single day so he can see. Because when he found out about April, he said everybody's going to wish me happy birthday, and he thinks that every day of April is his birthday. So is trying to get him to understand. And we went to the store and I got him a nice gift, and he was obsessed with having this watch, and it didn't matter what I was getting or looking at. All he wanted was a watch, even though he already has watches. And so, it can be a little bit much at times, but I still, with all of my heart, love him. And we just find ways to get through it. These types of behaviors can cause problems if they interfere with everyday tasks or if they're harmful. Now, I do have my 6-year-old. She has some behaviors that can be harmful. She hits her head. She grabs her hair and she twists it into her. She says that that's calming, but she actually tears her hair out sometimes while she's doing it. So you have to make sure that, it's not physically harmful, and that it isn't interfering with your day. I believe with all of my heart that autistics need to have those repetitive things, and there's nothing wrong with them doing that. But I do think that they need to stretch themselves, and I've had to stretch myself and do things that I need to do in my everyday life. And then when those things are done, I can go back and I can do those repetitive things or whatever I need to do. But I really try to teach my kids this, then that. And so that's what we really focus on. Another name for this can be perseveration. And we will look at that a little bit, but basically that's just saying that you're stuck and you're not able to switch gears. The DSM states restricted repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities as manifested by at least 2 of the following currently or by history. So, in order to get the diagnosis, they're saying that you have to have at least 2 of these at some point. So the first one states stereotyped or repetitive motor movements, use of objects or speech. Examples include simple motor stereotypes and lining up toys. I have listed scanner frequencies for hours. I love scanner frequencies. That's like police and fire, and even the McDonald's frequencies, or NASA frequencies, or SWAT, or there's just so many, or shortwave radios. I used to literally sit down and write down scanner frequency numbers, and even now I think about, I still absolutely love scanner frequencies. But I don't know, and I do kind of, as soon as I find one in my scanner, I write them down, and it is kind of fun to me still. I do have a list of Marvel movies, and all of the shows of Marvel in order, and I've written them all down because it's just a list. I love lists. The next one is inconsistencies on sameness. Inflexible adherences to routines or ritualized patterns of verbal or nonverbal behavior. Examples include extreme distress at small changes, difficulty with transitions, rigid thinking patterns, greeting rituals, needing for the same routine or food every day. Now, my kids and myself are very much this way. We do not tolerate small changes, and I have to start Levi, my 4-year-old, at about an hour before he goes to preschool we have to start dressing him because he just has to have everything exactly in place. And if there's even a string hanging down or something, or I missed a tag, he's going to completely disrobe. Another example of that for my family is that Ricky, my 7-year-old, he could eat the same thing every day. And he went through pizza bites for a month or more, and then all of a sudden he doesn't eat it anymore, or then pizza, or then chicken nuggets, and he will not, once he's off, and he will not go back to it. Third, highly restricted, fixated interests that are abnormal in intensity or focus. Examples include strong attachment to or preoccupation with unusual objects, excessively circumscribed or perseverate interests. I had to be careful with how I said that. The next slide, many people with autism feel very anxious when asked to change their routine or schedule. While changes can be annoying to someone who is not autistic, autistic reactions to change can be extreme. Yes, they can. Autistics can give you the same list of movies. Every single time that you ask them what's your favorite movie, they can run down the same thing. Every single time it's like the first time you're hearing it, but it's probably the 100th time that they've said it in the exact same order. Every single time. They can play video games for hours. But perseveration can sometimes be great when your passion can lead you to a job, which it has mine, or to like-minded peers where you can actually make friends and join something like a gaming club. My perseveration, one of the perseverations that I've had is being stuck on success, which is a talk that I give, but it's on making it. And I have been stuck on making it no matter what. And no matter what happens, no matter what blip in my day or obstacle comes my way, I figure out a way, and I get stuck on how to beat it. And so I mean that's a good thing to perseverate on, I guess. There is nothing wrong with this as long as it doesn't interfere with your everyday tasks, like I mentioned earlier. Now I'm going to end with this, in that this is contradictory to what people in ABA think, but I don't think we need to change most of this. I think that it's completely fine. My 7-year-old was going to go to, or no, my 6-year-old was going to go to this one school, and I found out that it was more on the ABA style where they get rid of stimming, and they actually said to me, and it was just to go have her assessed, and they said, were there any behaviors that she did that we wanted to get rid of? And I instantly said, I don't have a problem with anything that she does that she needs to do in order to get through her day. And so I don't believe in getting rid of stimming. I think that those are there to help us get through our day. If you need to stim, you need to stim. You just have to know when to do it, how to do it. I mean, not how to do it. You just need to know when. You need to know where, when it's appropriate. And I think we do figure that out. I honestly don't think you need a lot. Sometimes we do need to be taught and told things. I'm not saying that. But as we talked about earlier with the masking, I think we figure out when and how and where and all that stuff. We just do. And if it didn't, if people are noticing that this isn't how you're supposed to act here, we normally will adjust, and we mask throughout our entire day until we get to the end of our day. And then we can do those repetitive things, or the stimming, or the things that we need to do. That's why I put these two together today, because I felt that they really go hand in hand so well. And it is what makes us who we are, a big part of who we are. So anyway, I'm going to end there, but thanks for watching my channel, and happy World Autism Day. And I'll see you again soon. As my kids always say, again, ready? Do it.
1, 2, 3, smash that like button.
And as I like to say, please subscribe, hit the bell, notifications that you know that I've made another video, share, let everybody know. So hopefully this can help them in some way. And as I like to always end my videos, keep being you and keep moving forward. Thanks.